It's Kate.
And Oliver Hudson. Host of the new podcast, Sibling
Revelry.
That's right.
We started this show because, you know what? No one talks about siblings and that dynamic.
The siblings, they know each other better than anybody.
Yes.
You know.
Listen to Sibling Revelry on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
I'm Jacob Goldstein. I used to host Planet Money. Now I'm starting a new show. It's called What's Your Problem? Every week on What's Your Problem, entrepreneurs and engineers describe the future they're going to build once they solve a few problems. I'm talking to people trying to figure out how to do things that no one on the planet knows how to do, from creating a drone delivery business to building a car that can truly drive itself. Listen to What's Your Problem on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Episode 299, Is Medical Tourism a Good Way to Save Money? With Dr. David Vequist.
Welcome to the Frugal Friends podcast, where you'll learn to save money, embrace simplicity, and live a richer life. Here are your hosts, Jen and Jill.
Welcome to the Frugal Friends podcast. My name is Jen.
My name is Jill.
And today is an episode that nobody asked for.
We wanted it, so we did it.
I don't know what it was, but I was thinking about medical tourism and how shady it sometimes feels or seems. And I was like, we are the podcast about saving money. We are the ones that need to be talking about this.
Right. Yeah. If you can travel somewhere and save money on your medical procedures, should you? Could you?
Yeah. And then came the task of, okay, who's going to talk about it? And what kind of person are they going to be? And I was nervous about what kind of person we would get to talk about this. But we lucked out so hard with Dr. Vequist. He is such a gem.
All of our fears subsided.
And is completely knowledgeable about the subject without being biased. It was literally everything I needed to really learn objectively about this topic.
Mm-hmm. I mean, there might be some bias, but he definitely has done a ton of research on the topic. No specific sponsorships that he's trying to push or ways that he's making money off of it. He's genuinely curious about it, has researched it a ton, and is just an expert and wealth of knowledge, not only as a doctor in the medical field, but someone who has done some extensive research on this particular content of medical tourism. So we could not have found a better person, I don't think, or a more kind person to talk on this topic. I'm so excited for you all to listen to this.
But before we continue to geek out, this episode is brought to you by Root Canal. If you need a root canal, try the 3-day spending makeover. It's much less painful. It will do nothing for your tooth. By the end of this free 3-day challenge, though, you will find what you value spending on, learn strategies for saying no to the things that you don't, and create a plan for guilt-free spending that may allow you to save faster to afford that root canal. So if that sounds interesting to you, head to frugalfriendspodcast.com/makeover and get started today.
Wow. Great tie-in,
Thank
Jen.
you.
Root canals. They don't sound very pleasant, but a free 3-day spending makeover, that is pleasant.
That's nice.
That's a makeover you want.
So why do we talk so much about healthcare? Because it's where you're going to find one of the biggest bangs for your buck when you are saving. And one decision in the healthcare in your healthcare spending can save you thousands, if not tens of thousands. And no latte decision can do that for you. So we have a few other episodes, like episode 230, Negotiating Medical Bills and Debt with Dr. Virgie Bright Ellington. We have episode 254, How to Save Money on Health Insurance with Eileen Doherty. And now we are continuing that with episode 299 on medical tourism. And we are personally not for or against it. This is literally our quest for knowledge on the topic. And we're super excited that we were able to have that conversation with Dr. David Vequist. He's the founder and director of the Center for Medical Tourism Research. So it's the first academic center in the world to study the growing industry of medical tourism. So his cross-border experiences have translated into a broader worldview with a richer appreciation of how globalization has greatly impacted health systems over the last few decades, and how technology has really made this a lot more accessible and even safer.
So let's broaden our horizons, broaden our understanding, allow Dr. Vequist to explain this to us.
Yes.
Without further ado.
Dr. Vequist, thank you so much for joining us on the show. We are super excited to talk about this topic. I'm very excited to learn more about it.
Absolutely.
Yes, thank you for being here. It's good timing for us too. My husband and I were just talking about, maybe getting a dental procedure abroad instead of in the States. But we know little to nothing about that process. So thank you for coming and illuminating us. So for starters, can you explain a little bit about what is medical tourism? How does it work? Just kind of 101.
Absolutely. Well, the first thing to know is that this history of what we call arbitrage, meaning going to find something that is in higher quantities somewhere else or in a higher quality level somewhere else, has been around since the beginning of history. So medical tourism itself has been around since the beginning of history. We've seen situations back in ancient Egypt where people would travel to Egypt for these really great practitioners that were there at the beginning of civilization. And even during Roman times, people would travel to places like what's now known as Switzerland and what's now known as Turkey for things like the balinotherapy or water-based therapies. And also the travel for, again, to get access to things or potentially get access to things at lower cost has been around for a very long time. And the modern iteration of it, it's essentially health-seeking behaviors and patient consumerism, which is truly changing the world. It's not just in the United States, not just in Canada, it's not just in Europe, it's not just in Asia, it's everywhere. And we're seeing people all around the world basically getting access to information primarily through the internet. The internet has been the great equalizer, if you will, and allowed people to have more and more information about what's available and potentially what the costs are. And that has led to greater amounts of consumerism, greater amounts of health-seeking behaviors, and greater amounts of transparency. And that's essentially basically allowing people to get access to the care that they need when they need it and at the cost that they can afford to get it at.
That's a helpful framework because I think when I hear medical tourism or going somewhere else for a procedure, it feels outside of the norm. But to realize and hear you describe, this has gone on since the beginning of time, as far back as we can see. But it feels as though one of those situations where people find themselves in like a scam or a botched surgery, or there can be a lot of fear around it. So to hear from someone with your background and expertise saying this is a reasonable way of going about responding to certain medical needs, the health-seeking behaviors, it's really helpful.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. It really is. It's if you think about it, what you sometimes see in the media coverage is what's going to draw in viewers. So if you hear that thousands of people went abroad and received surgeries that did not result in complications, is that going to be something you're going to click on? Is that clickbait? And the answer is no. So unfortunately, what we hear is the circumstances that were negative Now, from a scientific standpoint, what we don't know is you have to know both numbers. You have to know the number of people that had both successful outcomes and the number of people that had unsuccessful outcomes in order to understand the incident rate of particularly bad outcomes. Unfortunately, we don't have good data on that. So in science and statistics, what you have to do is go back to the null hypothesis, which is the assumption that there is no statistical differences. At this point, based on what we know about foreign healthcare providers, say in places like Mexico, is that so many people in Mexico have either trained in the United States, they've done continuing education in the United States. They have linkages to US-based healthcare systems and processes. They use the same protocols. The same protocols, say, that Johns Hopkins uses are seen all around the world. I can go into sub-Saharan Africa and find Johns Hopkins protocols because they're shared. So there hasn't been significant amounts of research done on the comparative nature of quality outcomes in a country like Mexico versus the United States. So at this point, what we do know is that you probably have to go to the null hypothesis, which means there's probably not significant differences. Now, one other interesting element when it comes to the U.S. and Mexico relationship is the Mexican government back in around 2008-9 implemented the U.S.-based accreditation system. So the Joint Commission accreditation, which all hospitals in the United States basically use, is the same accreditation system they use in Mexico. So they're essentially using the same quality systems. I would guarantee that, except for your listeners right now, that 99% of Americans don't know that. And so it essentially, the things you hear in the media, can we be honest? They're sensational, and people click on those things, and they make interesting points. But from an actual scientific standpoint, we don't have evidence to show that Americans going abroad are getting that much worse care than they are in the United States, quite frankly.
Wow. Mm-hmm. That research is helpful because I think for whatever reason, probably media and the anecdotal kind of stories that people have heard, there's this idea that you're not going to get any better care other than right within a 10-mile radius of your home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think for every, I'm not super knowledgeable about any negative stories on medical tourism or regarding international procedures, but I am very familiar with family telling me negative experiences they've had with procedures in the States. So that's what got me started thinking about how there can't, I wonder if there is a big difference, because I have heard, I don't know why my family have so many medical procedures, but none of them seem to be happy with the level of care. And so it is just really interesting how we're very quickly, because of our proximity, to be trusting of, what's right in front of us, and then think that everything outside of what we know is very sketchy.
Yeah. So it's an interesting confirmation bias, essentially, that we don't know what we don't know, but we're very sure of it, even though we don't know. We hopefully know that we don't know. So the United States, don't get me wrong, has extremely good care. If you look at, for example, survival rates, 5-year, 10-year survival rates in terms of oncology, some of the best in the world. We do have some of the best healthcare systems and some of the best providers in the world. But interestingly, those good outcomes, there was a very old politician several years before the PPACA, what some people call Obamacare, was passed, that suggested that the United States was islands of excellence within a sea of mediocrity. And I love that saying. That's a wonderful saying. And we do have, if you were to go to some of the best facilities and systems in the world, world, Johns Hopkins, Cleveland Clinic, MD Anderson, Mayo, places like this, you are truly receiving some of the best care on the planet. And we do have excellence in the United States. The disparity and also the diversity in terms of the payments that people pay is one of the bigger issues. And so what we find, interesting point in medical tourism, there tends to be a bimodal distribution. You see very wealthy people. So, for example, in years past, Kobe Bryant, Peyton Manning, Alex Rodriguez, who was a baseball player that played with the Yankees, they all went abroad to places like Germany for care when they were in the top 1% of the U.S. population in terms of wealth. So they traveled abroad. We see wealthy people travel abroad for destination spas. We see people wealthy travel abroad for cosmetic surgery. Interestingly, in some of the least affluent households in the United States, in places that are very low socioeconomic status, for example, here in Texas, down in the Rio Grande Valley, we see a large number of people traveling for healthcare abroad among those populations. So bimodal distribution, meaning we see more people that are wealthy and more people that are essentially poor traveling for healthcare. The middle class are the people that typically have the belief system that you brought up, which is they say, let's just stay here. Let's just do what's comfortable. Let's just do what's here locally. And they're the ones that are, quite frankly, not taking advantage of either higher quality or lower cost care.
Yeah, it sounds like just because there is good care to be found within the United States, it's not to the exclusion of good care to be found elsewhere, and that there might be varying reasons for people to do that, either higher levels of care or maybe less expensive but quality care to be found if you kind of shop around the world.
Yes. Absolutely. And so here's some great points, since I got some numbers and some other things for you. It's not just shopping around the world, but shopping within the United States. Several studies from within the United States have shown that pricing within even a state, such as the state of California, for C-sections, for example, there was a study that showed there was a 500% disparity difference in the price for a C-section from one hospital to another, just in one state alone. So you could essentially drive from one hospital to another hospital and pay a 500% difference. So we've seen some great things happen in the United States that are helping with that. And some of these trends are legal regulatory under the Trump administration and now extended under the Biden administration. We have transparency now where most hospitals share their pricing, including their cash prices. In a recent study that we did here in South Texas, we found that the cash price difference between a MRI, which cash price is a little over $300, versus the other types of payment systems, which include Medicare, Medicaid, and private insurance, was about $1,200, a little over $1,200. Interestingly, if you look at the out-of-pocket expenses that most people, including you ladies, probably pay, you're going to pay, probably $20 or more, depending on the location you go to. Then you have a deductible, which is going to be at least $1,000, probably more. If you have a family, you're looking at $2,000 or more. So essentially, interestingly, paying the cash price rather than going through your insurance. In other words, you ignored the fact that you have insurance and just paid the cash price, went to the imaging center, the hospital, the doctor's office, and say, how much will you give me the MRI for if I pay you cash right now? You will probably get a lower price than you would have paid using your out-of-pocket expenses, your copay, and your deductible.
Mm-hmm. I've had a sneaky suspicion about that.
Yeah.
That blows the mind, right? Isn't that fascinating? So not only have this disparity and this cash price difference. So a couple of great things are going on We're seeing increasingly more companies, billion-dollar companies, that are rolling out retail health options. We have technology companies. For example, I'm familiar with a company here in Texas that's called Lasso, Lasso, a software company which allows people to go on an app and find cash prices. And we're finding that increasingly there are systems and companies and brands that are trying to introduce you to ways in which you can negotiate lower cost, sometimes discounted cash prices for these various procedures. And it's basically better than it ever has been before.
Yeah.
I love that.
That's good to know. So let's talk about procedures and locations abroad. What are the most common kinds of procedures people will seek to get done abroad, and what are the most common locations people can expect to travel to?
Now, yeah, as I know, you have listeners from all around the world. So we do have to talk about not just here in North America, but all around the world. So it depends on where you're located and where you're comfortable with going. So what we find when it comes to medical tourism, particularly international medical tourism, is the most prevalent feature is that somebody has a comfort level with where they're going. So if they've been to Europe before, then they'll be comfortable going to Europe. If they've been to Mexico before, they're comfortable going to Mexico. If they've been to Thailand before, then they're comfortable with going there. So we see flows of people traveling to locations that they're not only very comfortable with, but that that understands their culture and environment, language, those types of things. So some of the most common destinations in the world are some that you probably have heard of or you can easily find on the internet. People travel from all around the world to India, a place that I'll be visiting again here in February. People travel from all around the world to places like Turkey. People travel from all around the world to places like Mexico, Colombia, Dominican Republic, Philippines, Singapore, Malaysia. They also travel to, if you will, first world destinations for typically higher quality care. For example, people will travel to the United States, people will travel to Germany, people will travel to Korea for very high quality care. And in many cases, they'll pay cash as well. They may even pay more than they would have paid in their country, but they go there because, quite frankly, they know they're going to get some of the best care in the world.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it sounds like people are going everywhere and it depends on what they're looking for. Have you seen any trends of these are the common things that this country might excel in?
Yes. So in general, what people tend to travel for is what they feel that they're going to get value for. So there was a really good book that was written by a Harvard professor, very famous Harvard professor, Dr. Michael Porter, who suggested that within healthcare, we needed to stop having these artificial distinctions of the idea of quality as distinct in the consumer's mind from cost. The idea, it's, for example, if I were to tell you that you needed to buy a new car, one of the things you would do is you would probably look for a car that actually had functional utility. In other words, you'd want something that had an engine, you'd want something that had a steering wheel, you'd want something that had tires. So you could get a cheap car down in a wrecking yard that doesn't have any of those things, right? But it doesn't have functional utility for you. So just getting the cheapest thing isn't the best way to look for healthcare. What you're typically looking for is what is the best value, and that's cost and quality. So again, knowing that like food, there's certain things that are better than other things in terms of taste, in terms of nutrient value, things of that nature. So when you're looking for healthcare, you're looking for the quality you will accept at the price you can pay. So you have to kind of balance those two things together. So when we're looking at value, we find that people find value in things where they can't really distinguish between the overall quality. So dental. So, for example, most people think that, for example, if I'm going to have a dental procedure, even something where a tooth is removed and you have it replaced with a prosthetic or an implant, you're most likely I'm not going to die on the chair, the dental chair, while they're doing the surgery. So therefore, from a values perspective, if I can save hundreds of dollars doing that, and the value is not that much different between an American dentist and, say, a dentist in Costa Rica, then at that point, you're going to go, well, if I can save hundreds of dollars, it pays for the airplane ticket. I get to go to a beautiful country. Maybe after the dental procedure, me and my family go to the beach and enjoy that. Then you're getting a vacation and the dental procedure for the costs you would in the United States. Then it's got extreme amounts of value. So what we find is overall, dental procedures tend to make up perhaps upwards of, say, 40 to 50% of all the procedures that are medical and dental in nature. Now, there is some research out there that argues that wellness procedures actually are even greater in terms of the total market share, but it's very difficult to distinguish between, for example, a person traveling internationally and going to the spa at the hotel from somebody that goes to a destination spa. So those numbers are a bit inflated, but we do know that wellness is very large. Past that, we see a lot of general surgical procedures. That includes and sometimes broken out the cosmetic surgery. And that's for situations where it is a little bit of an extra cost that you probably don't need to spend because, quite frankly, you don't need it. But it also concludes something where it affects how they feel about themselves, and so therefore they want to have a better quality of life, if you will. For those types of procedures, again, you can save a great deal of money. Some of the medical tourism literature says, in general, for surgical procedures, you're going to save, depending on the country, anywhere from, say, 50 to 70% of what you would in, say, Europe or Canada or the United States, if you're paying out of pocket. And interestingly, by the way, Canadians also travel for healthcare. Many people don't realize that, but Canadians travel because they have very long wait times. And so therefore, if they have to wait 6 months for a procedure, they're oftentimes more likely to come into the United States or go to another foreign country to get access to that and pay cash rather than wait for that 6 months before they can get access to a doctor.
Personally, I'm experiencing my own barriers to entry decrease. Like my aversion to this idea is kind of softening. And I mean, especially with that Costa Rica example. Sounds lovely.
So interesting. We've seen this really fascinating trend that came from Asia, and we see it in the United States now, particularly among women. What we have is these kind of ladies travel abroad trips where they'll do it as a group. And you see this on places like there's a website called The Real Self, as I recall, that has listings, forums of women that get together, and they'll talk about how much they paid, where they went, what their experiences were with certain providers when it comes to things like cosmetic surgery. So they'll oftentimes combine a medical trip with a vacation, and they'll go as a group. And they negotiate a group price, and they're able to take advantage of really very good care in places like the Dominican Republic. I was in the Dominican Republic, and there are many, many Americans that go there. And essentially, you go to two different locations. You go to a cosmetic surgeon, and then you get, for example, a mommy makeover of some type. And then what you do is you go to a rehabilitation location that's typically on the beach. And then what you'll do is you sit on the beach, you drink Mai Tais or margaritas and basically rest and relax after the surgery, and you've saved a great deal of money. In fact, it's in many cases it's actually cheaper than the procedure in the United States, and you get a vacation for it as well.
AI might be the most important new computer technology ever. It's storming every industry, and literally billions of dollars are being invested. So buckle up. The problem is that AI needs a lot of speed and processing power. So how do you compete without costs spiraling out of control? It's time to upgrade to the next generation of the cloud, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, or OCI. OCI is a single platform for your infrastructure, database, application development, and AI needs. OCI has 4 to 8 times the bandwidth of other clouds, offers one consistent price instead of variable regional pricing. And of course, nobody does data better than Oracle. So now you can train your AI models at twice the speed and less than half the cost of other clouds. If you want to do more and spend less, like Uber, 8x8, and Databricks Mosaic, take a free test drive of OCI at oracle.com/strategic. That's oracle.com/strategic. oracle.com/strategic.
Discover the heartwarming and hilarious world of sibling connections on Sibling Revelry with Kate Hudson and Oliver Hudson.
You might be asking yourself, what is sibling revelry?
Yeah, well, we just made it up.
They'll have some laughs and maybe inspire some people along the way with universal tales of what it's like to grow up with brothers and sisters.
We're full-blood siblings, the only full-blood sibling.
In our family. Well, not in the world. I mean...
No, in the whole world. That's just it. Like, no one...
Dive into family tales and explore the human mind with guests like Joel and Benji Madden.
And it's fun because we've decided to open it up, to really like all kinds of different siblings. And it's going to be an awesome season.
It's more than a podcast. It's a celebration of the ties that bind us. Listen to Sibling Revelry with Kate Hudson and Oliver Hudson on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
I feel like you're already kind of describing how some people enter into this and how they're choosing to do it safely. But from your perspective and what you've seen, what would you say to someone who wants to pursue medical tourism safely, maybe in as least stressful, difficult kind of a manner? Where would they begin? How would they pursue that?
That's a great question. So there are a number of businesses out there that have cropped up over the years that are what we call facilitator businesses. And these are essentially, for somebody like my age, I remember when there was travel agents and travel agencies were a thing. And it's essentially a travel agent that arranges for care for other people. And sometimes they have some more information than you might have, but quite frankly, based on the research and based on my personal beliefs, that you can find most of the information you need through various sources on the internet. Now, even though I've stated that the research shows that overall, from outcome standpoint and obviously from a cost standpoint, that this is beneficial, when it comes to healthcare, any additional factors that contribute to that healthcare experience can possibly induce risk. So obviously, buyer beware. By going abroad, by going even a long distance, you may be away from your support system. That could be potentially a problem. Many people that travel do bring a spouse or loved one with them, family member with them. Interestingly, you may not be aware of this, but some companies, for example, Walmart was one of the leading companies that did this for many years, have introduced what's called domestic medical tourism in their health benefits. And what they do is they will pay for a worker, employee, and a spouse to go to one of the centers of excellence, like I mentioned earlier, like Mayo Clinic, and then they'll pay for those treatments there because most centers of excellence actually have lower cost basis than a traditional hospital. So a good hospital typically can do things, believe it or not, cheaper than a hospital that's average. And so we oftentimes see people travel with some support system. But whenever you travel, whenever you go somewhere else, there's the added potential of infection rates. There's added potential of complications that could occur, and that puts you away from your support systems, things of that nature. So it's not without some risk, but it's a matter of you determining whether that risk is appropriate based on the financial decision that you are going to make.
It's occurring to me that we might also be more so talking about a procedure or some sort of specific one-time medical care rather than maybe a more chronic, complex, maybe also depending on what the comorbidity might be, that your doctor might kind of know your situation and you're well acquainted with your doctor for years and years might not be the situation in which you're going abroad for something.
Yeah, excellent. Do you mind if I make just a couple points that would be helpful, very helpful to your listeners? So obviously, I trust my primary care physician. Many people do. And you have to understand that your primary care physician is wanting you to stay in that local region, obviously for the reasons I mentioned, to increase kind of your total risk portfolio. But also, you have to understand that your primary care physician perhaps is friends with other specialists in the area. They go to the country club together. Their families know each other. So if you're asking them whether you should travel somewhere else, even outside of your region, it could be somewhere outside of your city, your county, even state, or it could be internationally, the answer is most likely that they're going to say no, because if the word gets back that, to their friends that, oh, I'm not suggesting these specialists in my local area, I'm suggesting other people outside my local area, there's a relationship there. There's a network there. So please realize that there may be some bias in some cases that people will not suggest that. Then the other thing, we have to talk about the big issue in the room, and I'm sure you've had another. I looked through some of the wonderful podcasts that you've done, but we needed to talk about one of the things, which is the best way to reduce your healthcare cost overall for your life is good health. So you have to lose the weight. You have to eat nutritious food. Prevention studies over and over again in the United States over the last several decades have found that over 30% of the total healthcare costs are due to your lifestyle. So if anything you can do to lose the weight, eat better food, do some moderate exercise, reduce your stress and anxiety, find ways to live a better life, you're going to end up saving money over the long time. So interestingly, most people don't realize this. One of the most healthy populations in the entire United States, you guys probably wouldn't even guess this, even if I gave you like 100 chances.
Uh-oh.
You ready? The Amish. The Amish.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
The Amish people live generally longer than most U.S. populations. They tend to be healthier. And interestingly, they engage in medical tourism. What they do is they do cash payments, and they typically negotiate a cash payment as a contract, if you will, for the entire Amish community at local facilities. And what they do is they're choosy. They choose the facilities that obviously give them the best care, that give them the best price. And then what they'll do is they'll travel outside of their communities to other communities to be able to get access to care. And yet they receive no government payments, no government intervention, no government public health, and yet they're one of the healthiest populations in the United States. And we oftentimes want to forget about them and think that, that's an anomaly. It's not an anomaly. They exercise, they eat well, they pay in cash for their health care. They reduce their stress. They have good support systems. My gosh, they have great support systems. I mean, I'm not saying we should live like the Amish. I personally love my phone, and I love my technology, and I love my life. But, there's a lot of things to be learned there, and we shouldn't discount that completely.
Do you know what else is a healthy practice and habit and reduces stress and should be implemented every week?
Every week.
The Bill of the Week.
That's right. It's time for the best minute of your entire week. Maybe a baby was born and his name is William. Maybe you paid off your mortgage. Maybe your car died and you're happy to not have to pay that bill anymore. Duck bills, Buffalo Bills, Bill Clinton. This is the Bill of the Week.
Dr. Vequist, every week we invite a listener or our guest on to share with us their Bill of the Week. And we would love to hear yours today.
Oh, well, I was telling you ladies earlier, my wife and I have always been considered frugal, and our parents somewhat disapproved of it. Our kids thought we were a little weird when they were growing up, but they're frugal now, and all Gen Z, I think, is the same way. And I tell you what, it brings me a sense of pride and a sense of satisfaction when I know that I'm getting something for a discount and I'm being a good steward with my money. And so I have to tell you, we pay off our credit cards every month. We have very few bills. In fact, we're almost paid off with our house, and that'll be essentially our last loan that
Congrats.
we ever have for the rest of our lives. And so we've paid off everything whenever we can, simply by living frugally. And one of the things that brings me a lot of satisfaction just happened last week is we get a percentage back from our credit card, which is associated with Sam's Club. And so we go into Sam's Club, and what they do is they have the option at the POS system where you can actually take your percentage that you made that month and take it directly off the bill. So I went into Sam's, bought a whole month's worth of food that we could use and various other things. It was like $95. I had $85 on my Sam's card credit rewards that I received. So I paid like $10 at Sam's Club. And I've got this huge thing of food and toilet paper and everything else that I needed in front of me. And when you're paying $10 for that, because I use my credit card for gas and everything else, wow, what a great feeling.
That's awesome.
Music
well done.
to our ears.
Yes.
We love a good Sam's Club haul.
Yes, and using up those credit card rewards. That's amazing.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Especially when that credit card gets paid off every month. That's the key.
Yes.
Yeah.
If you all listening happen to be able to get out of Sam's Club or Costco only paying $10, or you love your credit card rewards points, or, you're just a person named Bill, visit frugalfriendspodcast.com/Bill. Leave us your bill. We love them all. We love collecting them.
Discover the heartwarming and hilarious world of sibling connections on Sibling Revelry with Kate Hudson and Oliver Hudson.
You might be asking yourself, what is sibling revelry?
Yeah, well, we just made it up.
They'll have some laughs and maybe inspire some people along the way with universal tales of what it's like to grow up with brothers and sisters.
We're full-blood siblings, the only full-blood sibling.
In our family. Well, not in the world.
No, in the whole world. That's just it. Like, no one...
Dive into family tales and explore the human mind with guests like Joel and Benji Madden.
And it's fun because we've decided to open it up, to really like all kinds of different siblings. And it's going to be an awesome season.
It's more than a podcast. It's a celebration of the ties that bind us. Listen to Sibling Revelry with Kate Hudson and Oliver Hudson on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
From the studio who brought you the #1 podcast, The Piketon Massacre, this is Murder 101.
A group of high school students started a project to research a string of unsolved murders.
Those murders happened in the mid-1980s.
He's out there doing stuff. He just didn't stop.
Everything that the students predicted through their profile turned out to be accurate.
Redhead killer profile. Male, Caucasian, 5'9" to 6'2", 180 to 270 pounds. Unstable home, absent father and a domineering mother. Right-handed, IQ above 100, most likely heterosexual.
There is no profile of this killer except for the ones the students created.
Just because some of these women no longer have people to speak for them does not mean that they deserve to not be spoken for.
What if this guy's still alive? Like, what if he comes after us?
I said, are you going to kill me? And he said, yes.
Listen to Murder 101 on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
And now it's time for the lightning round.
Pew. All right. So for this week's lightning round, we are all going to take turns answering this question. And we amended it a little bit because Jill and I realized we didn't have an answer for the original one. So we're like, maybe we should amend it slightly. But what was the time you were surprised by the cost of a healthcare related item or overpaid for a healthcare related item? What'd you do about it? So, Dr. Vequist, I'm sure you have a lot of stories, whether it's personal or from other people you've heard of. So, please.
Without going against HIPAA.
Right.
Yes. Oh my gosh. So I have one that's pretty. So for those of you that have employer-based healthcare, you probably know that the census, the type of employees that are in your organization determine your cost essentially of your healthcare. Because if you're fully insured, or even if you're self-insured, essentially, by the way, self-insurance means the company pays directly for the healthcare cost to, say, hospitals and doctors. Versus fully insured, you go through an insurance company that kind of handles that for you. So at my university, and I sure hope they don't get mad at me for saying this, but we were essentially paying almost $1,000 a month for family health insurance out of our paycheck every month. That wasn't the match from the university. So my wife had used our employee education benefits, and we had met in grad school, but she decided she wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. Later, she decided, now that the kids are getting out of the house, she wanted to go back and be a nurse. So she went back to school just to take some nursing classes, finished that, got a job with a local hospital. Sorry, long story, but you ready? She got basically health insurance that has saved us. You ready for this? Drum roll, please. $700 a month.
What?
Yes. So for literally the last year, little over a year now, since she graduated with her nursing degree, we have basically got $700 a month back by going with one insurance plan through the hospital system she works with versus the university program that we had. So I tell you what, my gosh, that has been just an incredible savings for us, an incredible blessing for us. So I'm sure
worth it for her to go back to school and pursue.
I know, and the kids are out of the house, and she was the stay-at-home mom for the entire time. And we, by the way, also if you have any friends or family that work at universities, some universities give you free tuition for your children. So all my kids have gone to school for free. My wife went to school for free. We never paid a tuition bill for them, and now because of her job, we now have saved $700 a month. So thank you very much to her. Love you very much, honey, and wow. $700.
That's an insane amount monthly.
I know.
That's massive.
I know. Think about that. If you were in Africa, you could probably feed and clothe the village for $700 a month easily every month, and we were doing that, just one family.
Wow. What a lovely story of how you responded to that amount of healthcare.
Yeah. Okay,
money
Jill,
paid.
how about you?
So similarly, I'm going to go along the lines of saving money. Through the healthcare plan that we have, we get free telehealth doctor's visits. So with things that I kind of already know what's going on, but I would like to know if there could be anything prescribed because I'm not able to heal up on my own. And so this would have been a couple months ago. I was having an issue. I knew what the issue was and I knew what would resolve it. I didn't need a doctor's visit, but I needed a doctor to be able to confirm it and prescribe me something for the fix. So had a free telehealth call. Then went to the pharmacy to pick up the prescription. And I was all ready with my GoodRx app to get the discount and all of that. Didn't even need it because the prescription was like $5.30. I was shocked at the price. I really thought this is probably going to be a couple $100 and I'm going to need to figure out
a good antibiotic.
Oh my goodness. $5.
I just hoard them.
So the whole thing where I didn't pursue the care for about a week because I'm like, I can resolve this on my own by drinking apple cider vinegar and eating a bunch of yogurt, and it just was not resolving itself. But I should not have waited a week because in the end, between the doctor's visits and getting the medication, it was $5.
Modern medicine, y'all.
I know. I learned my lesson. Just make the phone call.
So for me, this was with my first child. He was breech and he was a boy. So standard procedure, they go to a pediatric orthopedic doctor to get to get checked for hip dysplasia. And I brought him in to get the check at the week that they told me to. And they were like, they charged me for the appointment. They charged me for then reading what the X-ray from the appointment said. And in that appointment said, oh, we couldn't read it. So you need to come back for another X-ray and then pay for another
X-ray
appointment for us to read it.
Wow.
And I was like, what? What? If this could have been, and he's like, oh yeah, he's just a little bit too small. And I was like, I could have just come in like 2 weeks later.
Right.
Like they grow like weeds in those first few months.
So what did you do? Did you pay for it twice?
So I paid for another X-ray. And I did not pay for a follow-up appointment because in my experience, if something is wrong, they call you 1,000,000 times. So I was like, no news is good news. And he runs fine. He runs too fine. So that is not medical advice.
Yeah, no.
We do not give medical advice on this show.
Don't do as we do.
But, and also they wouldn't let me negotiate the bill either. They were so hard on it. Like I was able to negotiate down my like delivery bill, but they were hard. And I guess it was because maybe it was a specialist within the hospital, within the children's hospital, but they were not having it.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that was another surprise.
Great stories, though. Great stories.
Surprises all over the place.
Well,
yeah, this is the vulnerability segment.
Well, I mentioned this at the beginning when we were just talking before the show started, but I am just so proud of what you two are doing and helping your listeners to save money and have a better quality of life. And it's going to bear so much fruit. And just thank you for everything that you two do. And it's just wonderful.
Thank you for your kindness, Dr. Vequist, and for being on the show and for just introducing our listeners to this concept. If they want to learn more from you, the research that you're a part of, where can they get more from you?
So absolutely. So you can go to medicaltourismresearch.org, O-R-G, medicaltourismresearch.org, and definitely just keep looking at the articles on medical tourism. You look at my name on a Google search and you're going to find a bunch of different research, including recently research about getting pharmaceuticals in Mexico. And we also have some research coming up on being able to retire abroad and save a great deal of money and retire earlier. So just keep watching and listening. We'll have more research coming out. And again, there's no reason that healthcare needs to consume your life and cost as much as it does. And thanks to advice like this podcast and research we're doing, people are going to have better lives.
Awesome.
Excellent.
And I
Thank
had
you.
one question that I forgot to ask earlier, but do you have information on your website about how someone can find one of those reputable like travel agencies for medical tourism or someplace to direct people to there?
Unfortunately, no. So because we're an academic research center, we're extremely neutral. We're just interested in the trends and the research on it. So we don't give advice. Obviously, that's between yourself and your physician and your own conscience and what your preferred level of risk is. So I'm sorry I can't give more detailed or more specifics to people. It truly is buyer beware, but I can tell you that the world is a better place than it ever has been before, and there's more options than ever before. And that's what your listeners should take away from this.
Thank you, Dr. Vequist.
Absolutely.
I don't know what I was expecting, but that certainly exceeded my expectations.
It's one of those, and I'm sure if you read the title of the episode, you were like, "Oh no, what are they getting themselves into?
Are they just running out of content?"
We thought the same thing. I was like, "Oh no, this is probably." I had it on the schedule, and I was like, I took it off, and then, because we actually couldn't find an expert to talk with us. And then Dr. Vequist, he responded and scheduled, and I was like, oh crap, now we actually have to do this episode. And so it was really great to learn more about the common procedures, where you might be going. And, when you're looking for a travel agency to book this kind of thing, I think, since Dr. Vequist couldn't ethically recommend one, I think just do your own due diligence. I did some Googling. They're definitely out there. They're not hiding. So, like with anything, reach out to several, see who you feel best about going with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, ask around too, because chances are you've got people within your network who have explored medical tourism. And I appreciate how Dr. Vequist pointed out that it's not just traveling abroad or internationally. Medical tourism can happen within the country that you're living in. And I know plenty of people who will travel across the country for certain medical procedures if a hospital is known to be better than another. So I think for me, it really highlighted the areas of bias and ignorance, like where I think or relate in a certain way to my understanding of the medical world and how we make good medical decisions, and really kind of decreasing that barrier to entry and understanding more about it.
Yeah, I think I definitely had some biases, and I knew that going in, and I wanted to be educated and not convinced. And I feel like that happened. And so, I'm excited if I ever need a root canal, maybe I'll try this out.
Take a friend,
Yeah.
Not just for the friend's sake to have a nice little vacation. But I do appreciate what he said about the support and having a support network. You never know what you're going to encounter in your own recovery. And having a familiar face could be really important.
Yeah, it is something where there are a few other things to account for doing something either abroad or even across the country that you don't need to account for if you're going down the street. And so that's something to consider if you want to explore this option. Is it worth paying more to be really close to home? Is there something in the country that's maybe a nonprofit hospital that's comparable that I'm okay paying somewhere in the middle? So yeah, just another instance where getting creative and doing your due diligence could save you money or increase your quality.
Thank you, everyone, for listening, for tagging along in our own quest for just greater understanding.
Yeah.
Medical bills is where we spend so much money. Many times it's unforeseen. Sometimes it happens in the midst of a crisis. So wherever we can figure out ways to decrease those costs, we're here for it. We're at least here to learn more. And thanks for being here with us. We love, love, love reading your kind reviews. Obviously, we love kind people. Dr. Vequist was one of them. And we especially loved this kind review. It comes from JND41211, game-changing, no-shame approach to personal finance. I am a podcast binger, and this podcast is worth the binge. Jen and Jill encourages their community to choose frugality as a lifestyle rather than a temporary tool to save money, focusing on a balanced approach to financial freedom rather than sacrificing everything: time, family and friends, mental health, health, etc., just to make the debt payoff date 1 year sooner. Bravo. I feel like I can finally say I have found friends that have the same mindset of stewardship as I do.
Oh my gosh.
I feel like you have summarized our podcast ethos and approach JND 41-11 in like the best possible way. And it's reviews like this that make it helpful for others to identify, is this podcast going to be right for them? That's the whole hope with a review of helping others determine, should I even give this a try? Is it going to be for me? And you did an excellent job of highlighting really what we're all about. So thank you for that kind review.
Yes. And the more reviews we have, the less people think that we're just stealing them from our friends and family and writing them ourselves. So that's why we ask so often. So thank you, JND 41-11.
And thank you all, treasured listeners. If you enjoyed this show, please take a minute to leave a rating and a review. Again, it helps other potential new listeners know what this podcast is all about, if it's going to be a good fit for them. And again, we love the kindness. If you just want to be kind to us, go leave us a review.
Absolutely.
See you next time.
Frugal Friends is produced by Eric Sirianni.
Did you want to say something about the mommy makeover?
We were just talking about that the other day.
We were in the car and we're just commenting on how normal it's becoming. People just, getting Botox or mommy makeovers.
I actually thought about that this morning, about how I said it's a blessing to look average, because I've never felt the desire to accentuate any part of myself with like a mommy makeover or Botox, because I feel like good looking people want to accentuate that and keep that going through procedures. And I've never felt a need to, because it's just prolonging averageness. And it's a blessing, I think. I thought about that this morning when I was looking in the mirror.
Stop it. You are making me laugh. It's a very funny concept. I don't need to accentuate more averageness. You are not average.
Hey, I didn't say I was bad looking.
Above average.
Oh, thank you.
Very beautiful woman, inside and out, with so much wisdom, knowledge to share with the world.
Oh my gosh, who needs Botox when I have you?
Oh, I'm your Botox injection. Yes. Come on over to my house, baby girl. I'll give you what you need. I'll give you your mommy makeover.
Oh my God. Okay.
And a Mai Tai.
Yes. And I won't have to compete. The Mai Tai won't have to compete with the major pain meds that you will inevitably get from that procedure. Yes. When he was saying that, I was like, well, you probably shouldn't have the Mai Tais after the procedure, because you're probably going to be on Vicodin or something. So keep that in mind.
Yeah, just keep it in mind.
Keep it in mind. I'm not here to tell you what to do.
Discover the heartwarming and hilarious world of sibling connections on Sibling Revelry with Kate Hudson and Oliver Hudson. Dive into family tales, explore the human mind, and laugh with guests like Joel and Benji Madden. It's more than a podcast. It's a celebration of the ties that bind us.
And it's fun because we've decided to open it up to really all kinds of different siblings. And it's going to be an awesome season.
Listen to Sibling Revelry with Kate Hudson and Oliver Hudson on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hi, I'm Frances Fry.
And I'm Ann Morris.
And we are the hosts of a new TED podcast called Fixable.
We've helped leaders at some of the world's most competitive companies solve all kinds of problems.
On our show, we'll pull back the curtain and give you the type of honest, unfiltered advice we usually reserve for top executives. Give us a call and we'll help you solve the problems you're stuck on. Listen to Fixable on the iHeartRadio app, on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.